Regardless of your company's size and the equipment it uses, problems inevitably arise. Either the internet breaks down, or some system fails, or something else happens. Naturally, when incidents occur, the responsible administrators immediately do everything possible to eliminate the consequences and restore the system as quickly as possible. And after restoration, conclusions are drawn about the causes of the failure and measures that can be taken to prevent such incidents from happening again. This is exactly what's called the incident management process. Usually, one of several incident response approaches is used. If you have a small company, it's often the case that everything is handled by a single administrator. Naturally, all colleagues turn to him with any questions. The printer broke down, the internet failed, something else happened, and this person responds to all the problems accordingly. In larger companies, where infrastructure is handled not by one person but by several, and often even multiple departments, a shared messenger approach is used. A chat is created, all colleagues are added to it, and as soon as an incident occurs, a collective discussion immediately begins within this chat. The responsible administrator who found the problem in their area of responsibility informs colleagues about what happened, approximate restoration time frames, and handles the problem resolution when necessary. They involve neighbors, and together, collectively and harmoniously, they eliminate the incident. In large companies, a full-fledged process with a capital P is used to counter incidents. A monitoring system is set up where all the company's most critical systems are registered. A special monitoring and response department constantly watches the state of the entire company infrastructure and immediately creates an emergency conference when any incidents arise, invites responsible administrators, and together they try to solve the problem. Immediately after resolution, they record the presumed cause of the incident and the report is sent to a special committee. With a certain periodicity, this committee reviews all incidents that occurred during a period, for example, during a week. The causes of incidents are determined, measures that can be taken to prevent such incidents in the future are selected, and naturally, responsible administrators are assigned to ensure these measures are implemented. And although all this sounds very technological and modern, the devil is in the details, as they say. Let's return to the option with the process and committee for incident collection. But let's consider that the process participants are living people. Let's start with the committee representatives. Usually, their ranks include respected people with enormous experience and knowledge. However, it's obvious that in the modern world one cannot know everything, especially in the IT world. For example, they have enormous knowledge and experience in server administration, but during the incident, the problem arose somewhere in the network. For instance, with dynamic routing protocols, which committee representatives have only seen somewhere, heard about, maybe read about once in books. On the other hand, the role of committee members is that they, regardless of their competency, must still provide judgment about the incident, its causes, and what to do about it next. And the third aspect that definitely comes into play here is that people holding fairly high positions find it very difficult to publicly admit their incompetence and say out loud that they don't know something. It turns out that on one hand they may have insufficient data for a judgment, and on the other hand they may lack experience and knowledge for objective reasons. In such cases, the human mind tries to optimize the decision-making process and choose the simplest and most effective path. Committee members inevitably develop a standard behavioral template from incident to incident. Namely, after each incident, answers must be given to two questions: who is to blame and what to do. Now let's look at the process from the responsible administrator's perspective. At the moment of the incident, they promptly took action and eliminated the causes of the incident and subsequently restored their system's operation. They did well, undoubtedly. However, almost immediately after the incident, their colleague or boss comes to them and asks them to make an incident report. Naturally, the report should include the timing of all actions, all causes, all nuances, and preferably be formatted according to the company's existing form. Even if the causes of the incident are known and clear, putting them on paper still requires effort and time. And what if the incident was caused by the administrator's own action? The administrator is also a living person, and they really don't want to feel guilty and then have to justify themselves. So instead of solving their usual daily tasks, they spend their energy and time presenting the facts in such a way as not to look guilty. Besides this, the larger the organization, the more formal its approach to incident resolution, and the more it may seem to the administrator that all these measures are like part of their punishment for the very fact that the incident occurred. And who suffers most from such an approach? Let's proceed from the fact that all people make mistakes, engineers included. They're people too. Let's say an engineer makes a mistake once in 1,000 actions. He might get the name of some equipment component wrong, or he might accidentally touch something very important and bring down an entire system. But the math still shows that the more a person works, the more action they perform, and the higher their probability of making an error. This means that such an approach to incidents tends to punish people who work more. To summarize so far, it turns out that the process created to prevent incidents first of all wastes administrators' time on itself, thereby depriving them of time for their daily responsibilities, which means increasing the risk of those very incidents. And secondly, it passively punishes those who work more. You'll agree that something's not right here. Enough criticism. Let's move on to suggestion. The first thing I'd advise everyone, regardless of what process you have in place, is to never look for someone to blame. All process participants, engineers, users, managers, and even the company's CEO should primarily not look for culprits, but focus on finding the cause of the incident as quickly as possible and naturally eliminating it afterward. And this is only possible when all process participants are confident that they won't face consequences for telling the truth. In other words, the first question that should be asked during any incident is who did what. Either engineers will shrug and say, no, nobody did anything, or someone will say, I did this and that, here and there. And then you should primarily look in that direction, what actions could have led to the incident. If an incident is man-made following any engineering actions, this approach can significantly reduce the time needed to resolve it, which means saving money for the business. If we think about this topic even more deeply, we can say that engineers have the privilege to make mistakes. Think about it. If they get scolded for any mishaps, failures, and outages, the natural reaction would be to not touch anything at all, which means not fully understanding the system's capabilities and limitations, and therefore taking longer to respond when the system breaks down. An experienced engineer isn't afraid to make mistakes. Through them, they gain invaluable experience and understanding of all the system's strengths and weaknesses as a whole. At the same time, an experienced engineer never forgets for a moment about the responsibility and trust placed on them. After all, their actions directly affect the availability of the system and services entrusted to them, and therefore the entire business. An engineer's motto should be, you break it, you fix it. Every engineer should know that in case of an incident caused specifically by their actions, they won't face any consequences. However, they will be fully involved in incident analysis, finding the root causes, and their subsequent elimination. In case of a repeat incident with the same engineer under the same condition, consider reviewing the IT process that led to these specific consequences. And only in case of a third incident with the same engineer and the same symptoms should punishment be considered, not before. If we move from organizational aspects and processes to detailed actions, regardless of what broke, I'd recommend two things. First, which I already mentioned, is to ask who did what. And second, if nobody did anything, look for the approximate cause of the incident and start, most likely, with a system restart. Naturally, if you haven't found an obvious cause for what broke, let's summarize everything mentioned above. Never look for someone to blame. Second, in case of an incident, try to understand its causes as quickly as possible and direct all your actions toward this goal. Third, if a system isn't working, nobody did anything, and there's no clear understanding of what happened, restart it. Do this at the beginning of the incident, not after half an hour of analysis. In many cases, this will reduce resolution time. Either it won't affect anything and the problem will reproduce, or you'll see a working system after the restart. Good luck to you and fewer incidents.